6 days before he died, Kyle Busch stood in victory lane at Dover Motor Speedway after winning his 69th career Truck Series race. A reporter asked him a simple question. Why do moments like this never get old? Kyle smiled and answered, because you never know when the last one is. At the time, it sounded like the kind of thoughtful answer a veteran driver gives after years of success. Nobody realized those words would become hauntingly prophetic. Just 6 days later, the NASCAR world woke up to devastating news. Kyle Busch was gone at only 41 years old. This was not just the loss of another driver. NASCAR lost one of the greatest talents the sport has ever seen. Fans lost a legend, competitors lost a rival they respected deeply, and a family lost a husband, father, brother, and son. To understand the impact of his passing, you have to understand exactly who Kyle Busch was and what he meant to racing. Kyle Thomas Busch was born on May 2, 1985, in Las Vegas, Nevada. Racing was part of his life from the very beginning. His father, Tom Busch, worked as a mechanic and raced locally, while his older brother, Kurt Busch, was already building a future NASCAR career of his own. The two brothers spent their childhood racing go-karts on parking lots, neighborhood streets, and small local tracks around Las Vegas. Even at a young age, people around the sport knew Kyle was special. Kurt once famously said, "If you think I'm good, wait until you see my brother." That statement turned out to be completely accurate. Kyle was ready for NASCAR competition at just 16 years old, but restrictions tied to tobacco sponsorship rules forced him to wait until he turned 18. Once he finally got his chance, he exploded onto the scene almost immediately. By the end of his career, the numbers he produced were almost unbelievable. Kyle Busch won *63 NASCAR Cup Series races, *102 Xfinity Series races, *69 Truck Series races. Combined together, that gave him 234 wins across NASCAR's 3 national series, the most in history. He finished 34 victories ahead of Richard Petty, a man many considered the greatest stock car driver ever before Busch arrived. He also won 2 Cup Series championships in 2015 and 2019 with Joe Gibbs Racing, and became known as one of the fiercest competitors NASCAR had ever seen. Kyle wasn't just talented. He was fearless, emotional, outspoken, and unapologetically himself. Fans either loved him or hated him. There was almost no middle ground. Nicknamed Rowdy, Busch embraced being NASCAR's villain. After wins, he would climb out of his car and bow toward crowds that showered him with boos. Instead of avoiding the negativity, he used it as fuel. The louder the crowd booed, the more motivated he seemed to become. But beneath the personality was a level of driving skill that even his biggest critics respected. Drivers across every generation admitted the same thing. Kyle Busch could drive anything, anywhere, against anyone. Then came the final weeks of his life. Looking back now, there were warning signs that something was wrong long before anyone realized how serious it truly was. On May 10, 2026, during a race weekend at Watkins Glen International in New York, Kyle sounded noticeably unwell over the team radio. Near the end of the race, he asked for Dr. Bill Heisel to meet him after the event because he needed a shot. Reports later said he had been battling a severe sinus illness throughout the week, made even worse by the physical demands of the road course. Even while sick, he still managed to finish 8th, his best Cup Series result of the season. After the race, Kyle casually told reporters, "I'm still not great. The cough was pretty substantial last week." To most people, it sounded like a normal athlete pushing through sickness. Drivers race hurt all the time. That's part of NASCAR culture. Nobody imagined it could be anything life-threatening. 5 days later, on May 15th, Kyle competed in the NASCAR Truck Series race at Dover Motor Speedway. Whatever illness he was fighting clearly didn't affect his performance behind the wheel. He dominated the race, leading 147 laps before claiming his 69th Truck Series victory. That was the night he delivered the quote fans would never forget. "You never know when the last one is." At the time, nobody thought twice about it. Looking back now, those words feel chilling. 2 days later, on May 17th, Kyle competed in the NASCAR All-Star race and finished 17th. It turned out to be the final race start of his life. Then came May 19th, his son Brexton's birthday. Kyle posted what would become his final social media message, celebrating his son turning 11 years old. The post was emotional and personal, praising Brexton both as a racer and as a person. "Your mom and I are so proud of who you're turning out to be," Kyle wrote. "You amaze us every day." Nobody knew those would be his final public words. The next day, May 20th, Kyle was at the General Motors Charlotte Technical Center in North Carolina preparing for the upcoming Coca-Cola 600 using Chevrolet's racing simulator. Simulator sessions are common in modern NASCAR. Drivers spend hours practicing virtually before major races. But around 5:30 p.m., everything changed. A 911 call was placed from inside the facility. According to emergency dispatch audio, The caller said Kyle was suffering from severe shortness of breath, overheating, and coughing up blood. He reportedly felt like he was about to pass out and collapsed onto the bathroom floor. Kyle Busch was rushed to a hospital in Charlotte. Later reports revealed he had become unresponsive during the simulator session before emergency services arrived. At first, many fans believed he would recover. This was Kyle Busch, a man who came back from devastating leg fractures in 2015 to win a championship only months later. He had built an entire career around toughness and resilience. But on May 21, 2026, NASCAR released devastating news. Kyle Busch had died. The statement from the Busch family, Childress Racing, and NASCAR described his passing as sudden and tragic. No official cause of death was immediately released. Shock spread throughout the sports world instantly. Denny Hamlin called him the most naturally gifted race car driver he had ever seen. Brad Keselowski reflected on their intense rivalry, saying he felt like the coyote with no more roadrunner to chase. Dale Earnhardt Jr. revealed that despite years of tension, he and Kyle had finally become friends in recent years, and that Kyle himself had initiated the reconciliation. Jimmy Johnson called him one of the fiercest competitors in NASCAR history. Tributes poured in from every corner of motorsports and beyond. Formula One teams, IndyCar drivers, athletes from other sports, celebrities, and political figures all shared messages honoring Kyle's legacy. But beyond the trophies and records, those closest to him remembered something more important. They remembered the family man. Kyle's wife, Samantha, stood beside him through every controversy, every championship, every injury, and every difficult moment. Together, they publicly spoke about their struggles with infertility and eventually founded the Bundle of Joy Fund to help families gain access to IVF treatment and fertility care. His son Brexton became one of the biggest joys of his life. Fans saw a different side of Kyle after becoming a father. The aggressive villain persona slowly softened over time. He still raced with intensity, but people around him noticed he had changed. His daughter Lennox completed the family he cherished deeply. Perhaps one of the most emotional decisions after his death came from Childress Racing. The organization announced they would stop using Kyle's famous number 8 car. Instead, they would save the number for Brexton Busch if he eventually reaches NASCAR's top level. Kyle himself once joked, "Maybe I'm training the guy who's going to break all my records." Brexton had already won over 100 youth racing events before turning 11. The future suddenly carried an emotional new meaning. NASCAR eventually decided the Coca-Cola 600 would continue as planned that weekend. According to NASCAR executives, the decision reflected exactly what Kyle himself would have wanted. Racing does not stop. It never has. When Dale Earnhardt Sr. died in 2001, NASCAR raced the very next weekend. That same spirit carried forward after Kyle's passing. Austin Hill drove a replacement car for Childress Racing, while tributes honoring Kyle appeared throughout Charlotte Motor Speedway. Fans gathered outside team headquarters with flowers, die-cast cars, and handwritten messages. For many people, the loss still felt impossible to process. Kyle Busch wasn't just another NASCAR champion. He represented an entire era of racing. He was loud, emotional, controversial, dominant, entertaining, and unforgettable all at once. Some fans booed him for years. Many of those same fans eventually became supporters. That transformation may say more about his career than any statistic ever could. Kyle Busch changed NASCAR forever. He redefined versatility across multiple series. He inspired younger drivers. He built one of the greatest resumes motorsports has ever seen. And in the end, his final words after his final victory became the perfect summary of his legacy. You never know when the last one is going to be. So cherish them all. Trust me, Rowdy Nation didn't just lose a driver. They lost a legend.